She was abducted by men who wanted to marry her. That actually caused a lot of discontent in Kyrgyzstan. It led to protests as well. The second case as well, I think it was the case of Ayzada Kanatbekkazy. She was abducted in broad daylight.
Hey, I'm Hannah. Welcome to What in the World, the podcast for all of your news, trends, and talking points from the BBC World Service. If you're a teenage girl from Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan, you've probably been warned about bride kidnapping. It's when a man, and sometimes some of his friends, abduct a woman, and this can happen in broad daylight right in the middle of the street, and then she's forced into marriage. It's an old cultural practice, and it can be devastating for the victims. And now the president of Kazakhstan is trying to crack down on it. So today you're going to hear where this practice comes from and how attitudes towards it are changing.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 25 years old, and originally I'm from Kokshetau, the north of Kazakhstan. So this tradition is called Qizalib Qashum, which literally means getting away with the bride. And back in the time, the couples were doing it if the parents, they were against the marriage, or if the family of the bride's side, they don't have the finances to do the wedding, because the Kazakhs have two weddings from bride's side and groom's side. So I personally saw my cousins elope and doing this tradition, Qizalib Qashum, because their families, they didn't have money to do the wedding. But I first heard of brides kidnapping on the television. To be honest, after hearing these stories, I was kind of afraid of walking on the street. Every time when a woman from my family was going to the south, she was always told to be aware of brides kidnapping. I think it is changing, and mostly thanks to social media, because we're aware of the problem and we hear the cases from firsthand. There are also a lot of organizations nowadays and Instagram pages that are advocating for women's rights.
And now let's find out more about this tradition and where it comes from Malika Bariva, who is a content creator who covers Central Asia. Hey, Malika.
Hi!
Where did it actually come from? Why did it start?
So it really only started within the 18th century, particularly in Kazakhstan. It's spread only because it's such a patriarchal nature of men to kind of prove, I can be able to, bring in a bride. Though there is something that we need to make note, which is the difference between consensual bride kidnapping along with non-consensual bride kidnapping. So with consensual kidnapping, both of them know each other. They've known each other for a long time, or they really want to get married, but they don't want to prove that they know each other to their families, so that there still will be a kidnapping. However, with non-consensual bride kidnapping, they don't know each other. The boy seeks the girl from afar, or has known each other, or has known her, but she doesn't really know of him, or has briefly spoke to him.
We've seen cultures of arranged marriages. That's quite common in different parts of the world, but forced marriage by kidnap is something that's a little less heard of. And why is it that people do it? What kind of pressures are people under?
So arranged marriages cost a lot of money. Bride kidnapping does not cost a lot of money. It only costs some money for some certain feasts, like the I'm sorry feast. I'm sorry for kidnapping your daughter.
What's the I'm sorry feast?
So the I'm sorry feast, it is called Kishirim within Kazakhstan, within Kyrgyzstan. This kind of feast is to bring in the daughter or the girl's family, the boy's family, kind of to bring them in together and kind of have like this feast to welcome, yet at the same time being like, oh, I'm sorry that I brought in your daughter.
I'm speaking to Kubat Kasimbekov from the BBC Kyrgyz service. Hello, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me today.
There have been some very high-profile cases of bride kidnapping where women have been taken and killed, and this led to protests and discussions.
Indeed. The first one happened in 2018 when a 20-year-old student, medical student, Burulay Turlalıkızı, she was abducted by a man who wanted to marry her. And the police were alerted, and the police stopped them in the middle of the way before the abductor reached his village. So basically, the police left the victim and the kidnapper in one room, and during this conversation, the abductor stabbed Burulay to death, and that actually caused a lot of discontent in Kyrgyzstan. It led to protests as well. It led to the calls for the resignation of law enforcement officials. The second case as well, I think, it was the case of, I think, 26-year-old Aizada Kanatbek. She was abducted in broad daylight by a couple of men. Her body was found in a car of the abductor, and the abductor also was dead. And in this case also the police were alerted. And in both cases we see one problem. It is this reluctance from the law enforcement to chase after the abducted girls, or to investigate, because at one point it was very common practice, like before around 2000, they used to be maybe hundreds or even maybe thousands of cases of abducting girls in Central Asia. But recent figures indicate that the cases are going down. We can say that it's still happening in rural areas in Central Asia. Maybe we can talk about dozens or maybe hundreds.
In Kyrgyzstan, you can be punished with up to 10 years in prison for it. Kazakhstan, next door, which is obviously much bigger than Kyrgyzstan, the law has now been changed to try to make it easier to prosecute abductors. There was a loophole before that if you abducted someone and let them go if they didn't want to
Indeed.
marry you, then you could get away without any penalties. But now the actual
If you release
them, but now the actual act of abduction itself and the penalties are much stronger, up to 10 years.
Yes.
and a big fine. If the police do get involved and this is reported to the police, how easy is it for them to prosecute?
Experts believe that only maybe 5 to 10% of bride kidnapping cases reach the judges, basically. Most of the times, girls or victims of this crime would be reluctant to actually file a formal complaint, because firstly, they don't want to be stigmatized, and secondly, they don't want to get into this long process. Yes, when they know that there could be some reluctance or negligence from law enforcement. So I think all these issues adds up, and that's why these cases are not fully reaching courts, and those
They're hugely under-prosecuted.
under-prosecuted. Yeah.
I'm curious as to what the families make of this. The families of the women, do they support the women being married off like this, or do they fight for her return?
Yeah, it depends on the families. Some families, they support the girls till the end, and some families, they want her come back and to stay safe in their families. But some families might say, don't come even. There were some cases from what we hear, yes, don't come. And once you are there, even though you are saved and you come back to your village, I think those girls in previous times, they used to be stigmatized and ashamed, but this attitude is changing.
You have some personal experience of this. You're from Kyrgyzstan, and there have been some bride kidnappings in your family.
Indeed. I grew up in one of the rural villages in northern Kyrgyzstan. My own sister was abducted. You know, she always wanted to go to the city to study, and suddenly one day I came home from my school, and a lot of people were in the yard, and they were just discussing something. And I looked at them, and I didn't find my sister, middle sister, and I just asked them, what happened? And they said, you know, she was kidnapped, and we actually chased after her. We went there, but it was very difficult to negotiate with the side, the relatives of the abductor. And, you know, she decided to stay because apparently she was once or several times told by my mother that never enter another man's household. If you allowed it to happen, then try not to get out, because it will affect your fate. It will affect your future.
Is that about reputation?
And usually, and it also involves some sort of stigmatization as well.
Kubat, thank you so much for sharing such personal stories with me.
Not at all. It is, hopefully this practice will die out completely, And I'm really glad that overall the society is and activists and lawmakers are taking actions to eradicate these issues.
Definitely.
Thank you.
That's it from me today. But if you enjoyed this episode, do check out some of our other ones right here on YouTube or wherever you get your BBC podcasts. I'm Hannah. This is What in the World from the BBC World Service. We'll see you next time.